It is now time for me to get into my book, and it's a TKO book. I haven't done this in a while, but I have talked about TKO books a lot on this show, and this is part of, I guess it was their fourth wave, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth wave. So we talked to Z Chun, who is the of course the well, actually co-founder of TKO Studios, but he was the writer for The Forgotten Blade, which we talked about on here. I did
Which was
review that
awesome.
I did review that for Geeks Worldwide. I gave that a 9 out of 10. Really, really enjoyed that series. We ended up, so we talked about him with that and everything else. But then we have Black Mass Rising, and we didn't get to do an interview for that one. And this was actually the one when I looked at the two, I was like, I want to read that shit real bad.
Yeah.
Like I really like, and I have the TKO. So we get the review copies for all this different stuff, right? And it's great. And reading it in digital form too. I forget, do you have an iPad or a tablet?
I do, yes.
You do. Do you read your digital copies on there, right?
Generally,
Yeah.
yes.
So I do that as well. Long before we did this show, I actually read like all the review copies on my computer, and it was just not like, I had no time for it. And I was never a tablet guy, but 100% need it for that stuff. But to TKO's credit, they give us the hard copies, and obviously they have their collected edition of each issue. That's how I ended up reading Black Mass Rising, which is written by Theo Presides. I apologize if I'm saying the name wrong. Jodi Muir, and then the letters are by Hassan Otsmani El How. And when it comes, you talked about the art before with Tula Lotte and with Stephanie Hans. I don't know if Tula Lotte is from Europe. I don't know if Jodi Muir is either. We know Stephanie Hans is, but where we talked to, who was it? We talked Melissa Flores, who we talked to recently about, people overseas and their art style and how impressive it is.
Mirka Andolfo, right?
Yeah, Mirka Andolfo. She said Italians. I was like, Italians. It's like, Mirka Andolfo is there too, and she has a unique style, but an awesome one. Jodi Muir, I don't know if she is. I didn't look it up, but man, I looked at her art, Joe, and I'm like you see, that's her art on the cover, but it's like that doesn't look like comic book art. Not at all. It is way too impressive for this shit. And it definitely threw me off when I read it at first. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. This is 6 issues in typical TKO fashion. You can get it in a collected form, as I showed you guys that I have. You can also get it in single copy issue as well. When I looked at some stuff after when I was doing the review, actually at the end of this book, they have all of the other covers, and they got some kick-ass covers for that. I know you have is it a Lemire Sentient signed?
I have Lemire
box?
Sentient signed box set, and then I have the 7 Deadly Sins Zichun box set as well.
So that is the big thing too. Like if you're gonna do like what the one issue we run into floppies is, how are you gonna fucking store these things? TKO takes care of that for you. So just something to keep in mind. If that's more your speed, no matter what, I always prefer the trade version.
I got to get my hands on the hard copies of those books.
Yeah,
I haven't read this one yet, but the Forgotten Blade.
Yeah, well, no, I'll give you. I have I meant to ask you if you wanted that one, because I'll keep Black Mass Rising since I'm doing it on the show. And if you want Forgotten Blade, I'll give that to you when I see you next. But the synopsis for this one, it's funny. I didn't look at shit for this going into it. Like I had no clue about the synopsis or anything like that. We had just done the Forgotten Blade, and I'd reviewed that as well. I gave that a 9 out of 10. I gave this a 9.2 out of 10, a little bit better. And I do wonder if I saw the synopsis, how that would have impacted me for better or for worse. I don't know if it would have done either way. But the synopsis on this: 1 year after Vlad Dracula's death, hope is returning to the lands of Transylvania. As the shadows of 100 years of darkness begin to fade, a young peasant girl dares to dream of a better future. But when a mysterious healer drifts into town, a new evil begins to stir among the ruins of the Lord of the Undead's former castle.
Fucking A.
Awesome, right?
Yeah.
So the only part that I like, the Vlad Dracula part, because obviously you hear Vlad Dracula, for those who don't know, that's Dracula, right? So that's the only part. Other than
is?
Okay, dear Dick. See, again, you motherfucker. All right, you got me back. All right, you got me back. You won. But that was still. But I will say, fairly early in this story, you find out that this is set in Transylvania after like a serious traumatic event happens, which is pretty quick. And the thing about you're such an asshole. Presides writing too. This dude does not hold punches at all. Like, we're talking women and children. Like, hide your kids, hide your wife, because they're fucking coming after everybody in here.
Love it.
It is crazy. And you meet this healer character. So the three main characters. They talked about the peasant girl. Her name is Aurelia. Solid. She definitely adds some interesting things in here, but she's definitely, of the three main characters, 3 on my power rankings. You meet her fairly early. I think you meet her first of the 3 main characters. Then you have the healer, and in the first issue, you see what this guy. So he's believed to have, like, connections with God and everything like that and whatnot, because he's a healer. You see what this guy can do fairly early, and it's like, oh wow, like this guy's a fucking badass. Like, we're talking. You remember the movie Priest starring I think it was Paul Bettany?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So that was based off, I think it was based off a manga, which I've never read, but it's not to like different types of powers in that sense, but I get that vibe right away, because, like, okay, this is a religious man of the church of the cloth, but he has powers. And he's going out and doing some serious shit. He's not just helping people out, like he's like in terms of healing them. He's got to, like, protect them too. So really cool. Like, love the healer at first. In general, love the healer. Then we meet another character at the end of the second issue. We don't find out her name, and I have it jotted down now so you can see it, Joe. But I'm actually not going to share it with people just because I don't want to mess with anything. Just going to leave it at that. But our introduction to that character is really, really badass. And then you find out more about her story later on and how she ties into everything going on. So really cool. They're really, like, she was number 2 for me. Healer's number 1. Awesome stuff for those characters. So you have those 3. I think you have a character that everybody can attach themselves to at some capacity. When I look back at the story on the whole, I mean, it like at the end, especially as I find out the synopsis later, find out like this is tied to Dracula. We're in Transylvania, where I didn't have that, like, perception going in. I'm just blown away by the transformation of the story from the first issue to the last issue to that last image, which is like all the stories happened, and then you get this last image, and it's like, wow. It's fucking nuts. It's awesome. And the first issue too, Joe, the final image, like, so Z told us how, like, they do a longer chapter every time. The first chapter is always slightly longer than the normal 22 pages. I'll tell you right now, you're going to read this. You better fucking read it. But you're going to read it, and you're going to see that end of that first chapter, and like, I shouldn't have fucking read this. I'm going to, like, it's like all around. I don't think it's nightmare fuel. I think it's like that horror adjacent kind of stuff where it's really cool. It does get violent. You do have some scary images, but nothing that's like going to rattle your cage, except for the final image of that first chapter. So I would try and read 2 chapters in one sitting, Joe. And if anybody else who's like Joe, who gets scared easily, don't read that first chapter at night and have it be the only thing, because it's going to fuck with you a little bit. I already talked about Jodi Muir's art style a little bit. Like, it's at first, again, where I don't know where the setting is. It's like, this is interesting. Like, we got this kind of classical style, and where, like, with Stephanie Hans, where it's kind of like more like it's watercolored, but it's kind of like out of control a little bit. Maybe controlled chaos would be a fair way to put it, because obviously she knows what she's doing. But with Jodi Muir, it's very refined. I absolutely look at that. I'm like, this feels like it's coming out of, like, not an old children's book, because there's a certain children's book that scared the shit out of me as a kid, and I should have looked it up beforehand.
Aesop's Fables?
No, it wasn't that, but I can't remember. But it reminded me of this art style, and it's just like, it's very well done, but it's also kind of fucking creepy too. I love everything like that. It, again, threw me off, but it works perfectly for the story, and it's obviously very impressive art. Story does not move at a breakneck pace. I know we talk about that a lot, and that can be very appealing. I would say very even throughout. Okay. And you have these tentpole big moments, and I think because of how it moves, the story moves, those kind of hit a little bit harder. And I said this in my review, every single, like, major development feels more important. Like the next one feels more important than the previous one. It's kind of mind blowing how Proceedings is able to do that throughout the course of this. But this is awesome. And the title of the book too, you see that, you think, oh, are they going to mention it? I know that, like, there's that Family Guy joke where they said it in the movie. You always think with comics that they're going to say it in some capacity. Could be very relevant, could be something that pops up a little bit. The way they do it here, it's so tiny, but it's so like Steph's kiss, and I feel like you don't see it very often where they do this, so it was really cool. And just to kind of get ahead, because I know we always ask these questions. Show, movie. I see this as a movie. Definitely has potential. I think it could be a really, really cool movie, actually.
Yeah, it sounds like it, man. Fuck.
Yeah.